Our next speaker is Laurel Haak, who's the Executive Director of Orchid. She has a PhD in neuroscience and has been at AAAS, National Academy of Sciences, and NIH.
No, I was in NIH for a little while. As a postdoc.
Okay.
A bunch of places. Yeah, I just couldn't decide where. So it's funny, I'm looking out at this audience and no one has a sticker on their laptop. It's just so bizarre to me. I'm used to just seeing this sea of stickers. Anyway, no stickers. And I think that also presages what you're going to see in my talk, which is lots of pictures, which is different than Martin. You might actually have a sticker on your laptop, which was, yeah, there you go. You do have, I'll get one of those. So anyway, lots of pictures. So we're all talking about digital communications. And this is one of my favorite slides with Orchid. I've been adding little things to it. I'm essentially pinch hitting today. I think somebody else was supposed to talk, and Yvke was very nice. When they couldn't come, she invited me. So this is going to be a talk a little bit about Orchid, but a lot about the infrastructure that we need for everything that folks want to do. So you'll see Orchid, but it's really a lot of other things too. So we care about digital communications, and this audience is digital scholarly communications. Well, of course, if you want to have digital communications, you need digital information. And the publishing community has done a great job adopting DOIs. It took about 10 years or so for most of the folks in the community to start using DOIs, and all of the infrastructure that's involved with supporting DOIs. Now, when you go out and talk to the scholars and you ask them, what's a DOI? They'll look at you kind of funny. And then if you ask them, do you have any idea what Crossref is? Complete blank stare, right? Do they need to know who Crossref is? Probably not. But it speaks to how we have to build this infrastructure and what kind of interactions we have to have across the scholarly community to make sure these things happen. So we need digital, meaning machine-readable information. I would also argue that a big piece of this, and this has come up in every single person's talk, is this concept of trust. It's all fine and good to have digital information, but if you don't know who it's from, how long it's been there, or who is asserted, or who the authors are, it's kind of pointless. So one person, I think it was you, talked about wanting information right away and not worrying about making sure it's there the next day for somebody else to read. I think when we're talking about scholarly activity, making sure that document is still there the next day, making sure that document is accessible, making sure we understand the provenance around that information is really, really, really important. So trust. Now, I think I'm supposed to be talking about reputation management. So when we talk about reputations, and in particular in today's world, we care about the digital information. We care about the trust that we have in that information about a person and about the connections between a person and a document, a person and their affiliation. And when we have that trust, when we have the digital information, when we have the infrastructure, we can start doing reputation management a whole lot better than we can today. All right, so this is my token Orchid slide. So what is Orchid? Everybody here know what Orchid is? Yay! Does everybody have an Orchid ID? Who doesn't have an ID? I'm going to shame you in public. It's Aries 1. Get on wireless. Go to orchid.org/register. It takes 30 seconds. Do it while I'm talking, okay? All right, so Orchid provides persistent machine-readable names. I'm not even going to use the word identifier. We provide machine-readable names. Okay? For researchers. We don't define what that means, researcher, but anyone who would like to have a machine-readable name, you can come to Orchid and get one for free. Now, what we do, it's all fine and good to have a machine-readable name, and you can plaster it on the front of your laptop like I've done. But what we do is make sure these names are actually used in the scholarly workflows that are out there, right? So we work with our members, we work with the community, even people who don't pay us, we work with, to make sure that these machine-readable names become part of every single transaction that a researcher does in the scholarly ecosphere. Right? Ecosystem, sorry, there's a new word. So when somebody submits a journal article, when somebody uploads a data set, right? When somebody tweets, et cetera, that a piece of that transaction includes this machine-readable name, okay? Now, because we're interacting in workflows, we can start to work on provenance, right? When was this assertion made? Who made the assertion? Was it the individual themselves claiming a connection? Was it the publisher after the whole review process saying this person is this author on this paper, right? All of these things are important, but because this identifier collection happens in a workflow, you can start to talk about provenance information. And when you have provenance, you can start talking about trust. Okay, so at the end of the day, or maybe in the middle of the day, Orchid ends up serving as a hub that enables machine-readable connections between people, places, and things, okay? We support the person identifier, but we work with other folks like Ringgold. I see Christine back there. We work with Crossref. We work with DataCite. The list goes on. We care about identifiers. We care that they're persistent. We care about machine readability. So we work with everyone in this space. That's our job. All right, and I should mention in passing, Martin prodded me to think about this. So Orchid is part of a grant in the European Commission that is bringing together DataCite, publishers, Orchid identifiers, and a number of discipline-specific data providers like Pangea, as well as publishers like PLOS and Elsevier to really noodle through. It's all fine and good to have identifiers, but how do we actually use them? How do we make sure that they're embedded in workflows in the right way so we can actually get close to the same number at the end of the day when we try to understand uses and downloads, et cetera? So that's work. I think the grant is going to launch this summer, and we'll start to see some work in Europe on that, but that's going to certainly percolate across the entire community. So at the end of the day, Orchid provides plumbing. That's the best way to think of this. We are plumbing for research information and the tools to help build trust in that information. This is a fabulous forest. This is a rainforest in Australia, so I thought this was a good way to talk about researchers. So over 1.25 million researchers have registered for an Orchid ID. Okay, now of those people, when we talk about what is connected to those identifiers, there are over 2 million unique DOIs associated with those identifiers. Okay, let's talk about this hub. Over 20,000 unique educational affiliations. Now you'll say, well, I didn't know there were 20,000 unique educational affiliations, but when we talk about affiliation data or any kind of identifier, it always comes back to how do we name things? What is the structure of an organization? And an organization can have Harvard University, but they can also have Harvard Law School and Harvard Business School and the Department of Oncology. What's kind of cool about these databases, though, is even if someone claims, hey, I'm in the Department of Oncology, there's a persistent identifier there, so we can always find that, and that then links up to Harvard, okay? So while there are 20,000 unique educational affiliations, those will roll up into fewer if we're just talking about the top level part of the organization. But because those have the identifiers for the organization, we can do something with the data. The same thing here, 30,000 unique employing organizations. Okay, so this plumbing using identifiers coupled with the provenance, because they're embedded in the transactions, provides the foundation for online reputational management. So I had to put this picture in, sorry. So what does this look like in terms of building trust? I'm going to go through these slides very quickly, okay? We're talking to a publishing group here, so you've seen Orchid identifiers embedded into papers. I encourage you, if you aren't already doing this, please collect them using authentication. Never, never, never let anyone type their ID in, okay? You don't have to pay us to do that. Use the public API, but please use that API to collect the identifier using authentication. And then to help out the researchers engage with this process, publish the damn thing in the paper. Get it in there, okay? Because otherwise they're like, well, I use this ID, but I don't see it, so why should I use it? And then the publishers kind of, well, the researchers aren't engaging. I'm like, provide them something, some little tidbit. Publish it in the paper, okay? Even if it's not in the print version, put it in the online version, okay? And you can publish it in many ways, but get it there. So publishers are doing this, and then submit it to Crossref too, okay? This is showing up in publication search engines are using Orchid. You can search. Theses, personnel records. Universities are doing a really nice triple play. Here's a person's Orchid ID. Here's the university ID. Oh, and look, here's their thesis ID. Oh, and the university is making the assertion. Very cool. Association membership systems. This is Society for Neuroscience, linking the Orchid ID with the member number. And we'll then further go to link that Orchid identifier with your presentation at the next society meeting. Kind of cool. Data set. So here's a nice picture of Figshare. If you upload your data set into Figshare, you can link it to your Orchid ID. And then anytime after that you upload a data set, the data set information is pushed over to Orchid. You now have a really nice way of saying, here's the DOI for my data set, here's my Orchid ID, let's bring them together and let's make that data available. Data site as well, and data management. Grants as well. Number of grants, and Wellcome Trust is going to make a very nice announcement probably next week. A number of funding organizations are actually starting to mandate the use of Orchid identifiers by their grant applicants. So we've got to grants. The next one here coming in 2015. One of the things that was mentioned in the keynote today is why the heck should individual researchers be spending so much time managing their online reputation? Shouldn't this just kind of happen? Well, when we start to think about using identifiers for plumbing, it can just kind of happen as long as the individual uses the ID and as long as you guys, not just publishers, are collecting the darn thing using authentication. So now what you can start to see, and this will be launched by Crossref a little later this year, person comes to submit manuscript, publisher asks for ID, publisher includes that ID as the manuscript goes through the production process, submits it to Crossref at the end of the day with the authenticated ID in it. Crossref receives, triggers sent, and ping, individual's Orchid record updated with information. And then anyone that's pulling information from Orchid, or Crossref for that matter, can use that information to update their local repository, profile page, you name it. No more typing, no more, ooh, I got the DOI wrong, where is that information? It flows through automatically. This is what plumbing does for you. Okay, Orchid's role, we create the tools, we engage the community. So at the bottom of the page here, and there's no little light, and of course no one can read this, you see at the bottom of every record, or included in every record in Orchid, this is just the public view, but through the API you can get the source information. Where did that come from? So the provenance of information is embedded in all the links between Orchid and other documents. So trust. So now we start talking about how is this actually used. It's all fine and good for me to come up here and talk about Orchid and rah-rah, but this is actually being used in the community for reputational management. Okay? So I'm going to flip through a number of slides from different systems, and this is not by all means meant to show everyone that's using Orchid, just some examples of what's happening. So here you have Kudos, which if I were properly speaking, it would be kudos, working on reputational management, and what they allow you to do is link your Kudos account to your Orchid identifier, and then push and pull information between the two platforms. Again, reducing the workload for individuals, improving the flow of information, and the consistency of data. Right? So when we try to understand what's happening with this document, we can figure it out because there's one version of metadata. But anyway, edit your profile, add your publication list from Orchid, and use it to manage your readership and impact. And then they go further and say, hey, now we've pulled in this information. We can use our technology to pull in usage data, scores, citation counts, and other things. But to get to this point, instead of an arduous task by individuals, they can link to their Orchid account, which is being auto-updated, and get this information with very little to do. Now, there's another platform called Paris. This is open source, again. It's a free online service. The idea here is a collaboration portal, but also jobs platform. They are in the process of connecting their platform with Orchid, right? And then using this, the Paris profile will retrieve any relevant fields from an Orchid record or pre-populate fields in Paris, right? No need to type, no screw up with metadata, makes everyone happy, right? So now they're also thinking about making this record a prerequisite for joining Paris in the future. Okay, now another thing that was talked about was peer review. Peer review is slow, people say. It's difficult to find reviewers. Reviewers are overburdened, and expensive and slow publishing processes and irritated researchers, you get it. So what the folks at Academic Karma are trying to do is trying to turn the vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle and leveraging things like Orchid and persistent identifiers to get a sense of who are the good reviewers out there, how can we find them, and how can we incentivize folks to actually review, right? People are overburdened because most people don't get any points for reviewing. And increasingly, people are reluctant to spend their time that they're supposed to be writing their grants to spend it on reviewing, whether that's a grant or a paper. So how do we incentivize people? So here we do, this platform says, hey, we can demonstrate our peer review contribution here on this platform, right? And reviewers can then also actively seek reviewing opportunities. People get points for diligent reviewing, kind of cool. They've also managed to integrate Orchid identifiers into this platform to help people understand what else have you reviewed? What is your background, okay? And so here you can have combined activity as an author. Here's Orchid and Publons to help you with reviewer activity and also help them qualify people for review. Now here's another one, Science Open. I happen to really like that Yoda up there. They thought I was not going to like that, but I love it. So more open you must become. So the idea here, again, how do we encourage, incentivize peer review activity? And so they've also taken the time to embed Orchid into their platform. So authors and reviewers must use their Orchid record or create one to participate. We want to understand what you've done, they say. But all you need to do is log in, it's 30 seconds, and boop, they'll pull your publication activity or whatever from Orchid to populate their profile and then qualify you for activity on that platform, okay? I should mention, one other thing with regard to peer review in terms of incentivizing. We're also working with the publishing community, and if you're interested in working with us, come up and talk to me afterwards, on creating a way to round-trip information about peer review. So if somebody peer reviews for your journal, whether it's double-blind or all open, we have been working on creating a way to actually cite that activity and post it to that individual's Orchid record. So increasingly, publishers are starting to ask reviewers for their Orchid identifier and then post the information about the review, whether it's this person reviewed for this journal this year or everything, back to Orchid to say, hey, we think this is important. We want to make it public that you guys have reviewed us and make it digital so that we can start to include it in some of the ways people are measured for their scholarly contributions. All right, I'm almost done. Okay, so reputation, last two slides. To benefit you do have to engage researchers. Researchers have to be part of the conversation. We cannot do this without researchers. They only need to do two things. They have to register, it takes 30 seconds and an internet connection, and they have to use the identifier, okay? And here's the registration link, and that's it for me. So thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Laurie.